there's a lot of things that people don't know about, like how the black, what the black people used to do. I think it's the black people, I'm pretty sure. But there used to be these giant pits where there were sewage and trash would be dumped, basically. And they'd basically, I think they used them as mulch pits or whatever. But basically, pretty much flies and cockroaches would go crawl in there. And what they would do sometimes to people, I think it's the black that would do this. But basically, they would take them. They try and say that they were treated this way, but no, they weren't. What the black people would do, because they were like the emperor of China and Japan and everything. Like I said, they were elected into power, and then once they got into power, they made sure that nobody else would ever have power again. So what they do is there's big stone buildings, like big things underground, and basically I think they're maybe old mine entrances or something like that. But they have bars and stuff and tubes and stuff. And what they do to people that they don't like, they throw them in there, and they throw women in there if a woman won't, you know, do whatever. And like I say, there's a lot of cockroaches in there, and what the cockroaches do, if you're a female, what they'll do, and even if you're a guy, if there's enough of them around, what they'll do is they'll crawl in your ears and stuff, and they'll lay. I think they lay their eggs in the ears and stuff like that. But basically, they look for any warm place or any nice place for their eggs or whatever to hatch. And what they do with women is they'll crawl up inside her vagina, and they'll lay their eggs all up in there. And and we found some people like this, some Japanese people like this, and some other people. Anyway, if there's enough cockroaches around, what they'll do is they'll go when they're sleeping, they'll go up and they'll crawl in there, and then they'll lay their eggs, and there'll be this girl, and she'll have cockroaches coming out of her snatch, pretty much. Anyway, this is what the black people used to do to people. If you cross the black, if you cross the black or the brown, you go down. Anyway, back in 1800s and 70, or no, probably before recorded history. It's like somewhere before 0 year. Anyway, what they do is they would throw men and women inside these things and lock them inside these big stone things with big. They'd pull they're like ship things. They'd pull off the wooden grate, and then they would throw them in there or just make them. I think sometimes they'd just throw them in there. It depends on whether or not they liked you. If they liked you, they'd let you slide down the rope. If they didn't like you, they just threw you in there, and then you'd go and hit the ground or whatever. Depends on how much trash was in there, and then they would cover it up. And they did this in Japan and China and some other stuff. And they would also throw trash in on top of there. If you bounced and hit the wall and died, and then or broke your leg, eventually, you're just it's basically pits that they forgot people about. Once you got in there, there's no way to get out unless you climb the wall. Although some Chinese could climb the wall, using other people's bones or whatever. They climb out. But basically, I mean, we found people like this. There'd be like a little hole, like a room the size of a bathroom or whatever, and there'd be like 5 or 6 girls or whatever in there and stuff like that. But basically, what the black people would do to people that they didn't like or people that they were done with, like old people, or whatever, they just throw them in there. And like I said, the cockroaches would crawl up in there, and I didn't even know this. I found this out. My people found this out for me. Like I didn't even know it. Like when I found out how bad it was, I was like, oh, we're gonna do something about it. So anyway, like I say. The cockroaches would crawl up in there and lay their eggs and stuff, or other animals' maggots or whatever. I don't really know. It was really disgusting what we found. And basically, this was going on in China and Japan. Pretty much the black people were treating a lot of people like this. People they didn't like or people that said anything bad about black people, they would just throw them inside one of these pits. And like I said, a lot of the other people found out about it. And like I said, that's a stigma against the black. It's one of the reasons why they're probably black and all that other stuff is because they were doing this to Japanese and Irish and just about everyone. When they were done with you, if you fought back at all, you would just throw you right in. And then they would, and I've also heard stories about it, even them even maybe even crawling up the anus. I don't know, but it might just be what the black people said. But the women I knew about, I mean, I found out about because when we were liberating China or Japan or one of these other places, like we found them and they were like, there's cockroaches that come out of their vaginas because they crawl up in there and they're warm and stuff, and then they lay their eggs. So when we pulled them out, like when they were doing the thing, they looked up in there and there's eggs and everything inside there. Someone say, yeah, and we know. They'd just be sitting there, and a cockroach would just crawl and go down their leg. Anyway, yeah, that's what the black people were doing to everybody else, besides whipping and everything else. Like I say, it was, we should have exterminated them, but we didn't. Yeah, we just didn't think it was right. It's not their fault. I mean, it's their fault, but it's not their children's fault. So this is what they were doing to the Japanese and the Irish and the Chinese and the Americans and well, not the Americans, they weren't around yet, but I mean the Chinese, which were around, and everybody else. Like I say, I didn't know about it, until later on, and then I was like, and then I led the charge, of course. It's like, you know, and I had to kind of play dumb too with everything because, like I say, if I had slipped up even a little bit and given them a hint that I knew about it, they would have just killed everyone. They had the power. I had just let they just got into power, and they could have just killed everyone. And it's like, well, if I say anything now, if we do anything now, we're gonna get you know our hands chopped off. But if we wait, I think we can do something. So I had to wait for reinforcements and everything else like that. But this was thousands or millions of years ago. And a long time ago, I found myself in a bad way. And so this is what the black people did. And they tried to blame the Irish and everybody else. It's like, no, 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 no. There's only one group. And like I say, the thing was the black people were pretending like they didn't exist back then. And it's like, no, they existed. They've existed all this time. They existed maybe even longer than everyone else. I don't know. But anyway, though, or at least a long time, but they just never did anything. They just immediately their tribe or whatever. Anyway, though, and then once they got in power, they kept power completely. So this is what black and brown did and everything else. Anyway, they had quite a bit of power for a very long time. Anyway, that's partly what I did too. Is like I said, when I encountered them, they were very powerful and very no one could stand against them. But I was from another place, another time, another race. It's like, well, actually, you know, I'm from somewhere else, and not even from here. So maybe they're like, who's gonna help you? Blah blah blah, and this and that, and they had taken over and had control over everyone. No one could ever get their freedom. They'd just be shot, killed. They had modern day weaponry back when everyone else had sticks. So this was like thousands of years ago. I just barely remember the big pits and blocks. They destroyed any record of it and all that stuff. But this was going on in China and Japan and all that other place. It was a long time ago, like 40,000 years ago or something. Anyway, but basically, because I was Lucifer Star and particle creator and everything else like that, I was like, well, I've never really been powerless. I'm the greatest inventor ever. So anyway, and whatever you say doesn't really matter compared to the reality. So anyway, so I was able to lead the charge and everything else. And then they tried to attack again and come back to power. I mean, the black, they just kind of keep doing this thing where they keep trying to do it. It's the Yankees too, though. They did it for a while. Richard Nixon, it got really bad, like I say. Anyway, like I say, everything's been invented and everything, but that was the time before.